Welcome, Jen. Welcome to the Go Hard Chick podcast. Thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited as well. I'm thrilled about this conversation. We're going to talk about consistency and intensity and willpower. And I think I mentioned to you before we recorded that I recently spoke at this event and someone asked me after my speech, like how to stay motivated, how to stay consistent. And I was like, you know what? That would be a great topic to talk about on the podcast because it seems like it's something that folks constantly struggle with, even myself. So I'm going to stop babbling because I want you to introduce yourself to the listeners. Tell us about how you got into this health and wellness space. Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. So my background is really business and marketing. And I came to all this wellness stuff, like so many of us, through my own, I call it a saga, because there was like the word journey, like there's not enough drama, right? Like there was a lot happening, right? So it was a saga of mostly, like primarily for me, it was weight management and then figuring out my health around all that stuff. And I grew up a dancer. So, and my family, somebody in my family was always on a diet growing up. So when I started to gain weight, I was like, okay, well, I know what to do because I watched my family do this my whole life, right? And I did every diet under the sun, like gaining and losing, that roller coaster. And even when I learned about the curriculum that I based my practice on, I was like, no. I got my thing. I don't need whatever you have, right? My thing was the crazy dramatic saga, right? But I didn't need whatever, new thing. And then I saw people who were following this curriculum, this, other approach. And there's one woman who was telling her story of losing like 150 pounds. And legitimately, I heard nothing that she said after that, right? Like I was having a conversation with myself in my own head because I'm looking at her and I couldn't tell where 10 pounds could have been on this woman's body. And she's telling me that the equivalent of another human was attached to her, right? And with everything I knew, that didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I had this moment with myself that was like, Jennifer, right? This isn't even like a Jen. This is a Jennifer moment, right? I had this conversation with myself of like, Jennifer, they know something you don't know. Because with everything you know, that doesn't compute. So I worked with a coach. I followed the curriculum myself, completely changed my life. Like the only thing that allowed me to say I'd kicked my food issues. And I really believed everybody deserved this information. Like it was to me the nutrition education we're all supposed to know and no one ever taught us. And so I set out on a mission to pay it forward and help people help themselves. So I started health coaching on the side of my full-time job it was late 2007. So this is like before side hustles were a thing. It was before health coaching was so mainstream, And I built my business nights and weekends on the side. I was a photo shoot producer. I worked in hedge funds. I had a very successful career, but my heart wasn't in it. My heart was, in all this wellness stuff. So July of 2019, I left my full-time job and launched the podcast. Salad with a Side of Fries is my podcast. So that launched August of 2019. And the rest, as they say, is history. Now I'm here sitting with you, Crystal.
I love that, Jen. And because kind of like our stories are somewhat similar,
Yes.
A lot of times people see me in this space and probably you as well today. And they think I've always been this way.
Right.
That I've always been fit. I must have been some kind of high school athlete. I get that all the time. and I'm like, no, I was a lawyer. Well, I still am a lawyer, but like I was a struggling lawyer who thought in my younger lawyer days that that's all I could be. All I could be was a lawyer. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't enjoy anything else. And it drove me into this tizzy, if you will, of eating to self-soothe. And then,
Yeah.
I'm overweight. And like
Right.
you, all I
With
saw as a
stress
child,
and
right,
yeah.
stress is, well, we're going to try all these
Yeah.
different fad diets and see what
Right.
sticks. And none of it stuck. And
Yep.
then once I finally got a trainer and I was able to make the transformation, then it was like, oh my God, I love this. And I loved it, but I wasn't even thinking like you, Jen, well, how can I help other people? I was just walking around loving my new life. And people started saying, what did you do? How did you make that change? Can you help me? And I was like, no, I can't help you. I'm a lawyer. And then I thought, maybe I could help these people.
Yeah.
How can I be of service? So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that story. I love to hear stories like this because I think it's important to share how folks like you and me and others got started because it's possible. It's
Yeah.
possible. Even if you don't want to be a health coach or a trainer or whatever, you can transform your body. You don't
Right.
have to stay where you are if you want something different. So I
I
love
mean,
that. I
and
love
I
that.
would even take it out of the body, right? You can transform your life. Whatever it
Yes.
is that you ultimately want, right? We can become and grow and learn and progress. And I think that's the beauty of this human existence, not to get all meta, but you know what I mean, right? Like it's what a gift.
Right. Right. And we're not stuck. You don't have to
Right.
just be a lawyer.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, if you want to be, that's fine. But like we are
Yeah.
we have so many layers. So many
Exactly.
layers. Yeah, but
Yeah.
and that being said, I want to get into today's topic
Yeah.
because if you want to transform, I guess there has to be, and Jen, you're going to school us on this, some level of consistency. There has to be some intensity. There has to be some willpower, or maybe not. So, Jen, tell us.
Right. Well, I want to go back actually to that thing you said of the question somebody asked about motivation.
Yes.
Because I really think we've been fed a load of BS when it comes to motivation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, we all have this idea. We are led to believe that all of a sudden, lightning is going to strike and we are going to feel motivated and levitate off the couch and want to go to the gym and enjoy running on a treadmill. Like, no. And setting ourselves up, like, even having that expectation is setting us up. And then we feel like we're failures and we haven't even done anything yet.
Yeah.
Right? So I promise you, you're not a failure. It's that motivation. We're led to believe that motivation comes first.
Yes.
It doesn't. Motivation comes after.
Mm-hmm.
Motivation comes from once we can connect the action and the outcome. So I was actually having a conversation with a client the other day. And she's a new client and she's like, I'm really picky. Like, I don't eat a lot of foods. I'm like, okay, great. We're going to eat what you like and don't eat what you don't like. Right? And she was like, well, what am I going to have for breakfast? Because I don't do eggs. Right? And I was
I've heard
like,
that before.
uh-huh. And I'm like, that's cool. We're not going to eat eggs for breakfast then. I said, in fact, one of my favorite breakfasts is a breakfast salad. And whenever I say that, people are like, I'm sorry, what? Like, you are off your rocker. I am not eating a breakfast salad. So the first time I tried the breakfast salad, I was not motivated to try it. I was
Yeah.
compliant, right? It was recommended and I was compliant. I was not sold on it. I was trying it. And then that day, I had so much energy. Time flew by. I wasn't hungry until lunch. And even that like crept up on me. I was like, oh my God, it's lunchtime. I felt so good that motivated me to try the salad again. But it wasn't motivation that got me going the first time.
You said compliance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our objective in order to get to motivation is to get into momentum. Different M word. Momentum leads to motivation. In order to get into momentum, we just have to be consistent. We got to do the things, right? Over and over. Now, here's what's also interesting. When we listen to a lot of the gurus and influencers and everybody out there, right? And everyone's like, well, if you want to transform your body, you need to not eat and move more, right? You need to do a wild hit workout. If you're not getting your heart rate to this level, it doesn't count, right? We have all of these ideas. Not that I think textbook even exists, but we feel like if our day of food doesn't look like a textbook perfect day of food, it doesn't count and it's not enough. We have this belief that intensity is what's required. But intensity and consistency are inversely related. So the more intense something is, the harder it is to maintain. The less intense something is, the easier it is to maintain. So if our objective is momentum, maybe it would serve us to choose something less intense to get into the perpetual, to get into the momentum. And then we may feel motivated to try something more intense for a finite period of time.
Yeah.
So why all those diets we've tried, and I say we because there isn't a diet out there that I haven't done, my family hasn't done, or we don't know somebody who's done it, right?
Right.
Why it is so hard to stick with them is because they are not designed for the long term. They require an intensity, a commitment that one really only sustains for a period of time. And therefore, then we go, quote unquote, off, right? And we go back to old eating habits because we've never learned or figured out the small steps, the consistent steps. And I will tell you, small steps in the same direction lead to huge distance over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I want to touch on something because a light bulb moment went off that I don't want to miss it. You said you were compliant, and I took that to mean you basically did what your coach told you to do. Not necessarily that you wanted to or that you were motivated to do it, but you did it. And I think that was a light bulb moment for me because that's kind of what got me started. I just did what he said. It wasn't that I wanted to, or even that I really even understood, but I did it. And that's also another point of that. I'm going to go all over the place.
I love
the
it.
importance of seeking help.
Yes.
Having help. Even where I am today, I still have a personal trainer.
Yes.
You know, yesterday I went in there, he told me to do something that I hate. I did.
Right.
And I grumbled. I was like, I don't want to do this. But
yes.
You know.
Yes, 1,000%. So there's so many things on this. Like, so number one, compliance. Often we think compliance means textbook. Compliance means intensity. It doesn't necessarily.
Yes.
And that's also where the role of a coach or a guide or somebody to be on this path with you can help, right? And when we want to go to those periods of intensity, we have somebody to help us through that process. We're not
Right.
figuring it out on our own.
Right.
And to your point, same thing, right? It's part of why I love group fitness, because I just have to show up. I can get myself to show up, but I need somebody else to tell me what to do,
Right.
right? And no joke, I hate lunges. I think my body is allergic to lunges. And it is now a running joke with all of the fitness instructors who know me, right? Who I take their classes all the time. They're like, Jen, sorry, we're doing lunges. And I'm like, okay, right? You know, but now it's become a joke. And so now we go through it and we do it and it's this thing. But if I was on my own, maybe I'd do a few, but I wouldn't do as many. I wouldn't do as many variations. I wouldn't push myself in them, right? And I have a meditation coach. I have, right? We all,
Yes.
and it's an interesting thing because in other areas of our lives, we're totally fine having coaches and mentors and guides, right? We have them in our professional career. Look at every professional athlete. Look at every child athlete, right? And then somehow we get to this point where we think this we should know, this we should be able to do on our own. And I'm like, stop shoulding yourself, right? Should what? Nobody ever taught us this.
And it's like I said, I could do it on my own, but I
Right.
know I need that push. I need someone
Accountability.
accountability, compliant. I need to be
Yeah.
I need to be compliant. And then another gem you dropped was once you're compliant and you start to feel good or you notice the changes or whatever it is, that creates momentum.
Right.
Oh, this is good. This is good.
Okay. Awesome. So you also brought up before willpower, right? And that's the other thing we hear. It's either how do you have the motivation, or because we think everybody else is motivated, right? Or they say to me, well, I don't have the willpower. So similar to motivation, we've been taught a load of bull about willpower. So everybody has willpower. The thing that we have to understand about it is that it is a finite resource. So I think of it like a refillable cup. Okay, so it's like this cup in our brain. And any time in our day, we have to do anything that requires decision making, critical thinking, self-discipline. We use our willpower, right? We drink from that cup. And most of the time, we aren't aware of all the things that drink from the willpower cup. And we don't have things in place to refill the cup during the day. So we get to the end of the day, and all of a sudden, late night eating, the ride home from work, all the things look delicious.
Yeah.
And then we sit there and go, I suck. I have no willpower. It's not that we don't have willpower. It's that we used it and we didn't replenish it. Sleep is one of the top ways to replenish it, which is why breakfast is a much easier meal to have on plan than dinner and after dinner, right? Because we've been through this whole day of things drinking from our willpower cup, right? So let's talk about a few of the things. I mentioned a few, but let's talk through the stuff that drinks from our willpower.
Yeah.
Right? So, right, anytime we have to control our emotions, control our impulses. So think about driving in the car, right? We have to pull our foot off the gas so we're not going too fast, right? We're controlling ourselves. Willpower. We are at work and we have to make decisions. We have to figure out what's happening with our kids in a day after school and coordinate all of those choices and decisions and critical thinking are drinking from our willpower cup. Anytime we resist desires, so going back to driving in the car, we see a billboard for Dunkin' Donuts or we pass by a Subway. Whether we realize it or not, even just seeing the sign creates a food decision of I'm having it, I'm not having it, I'm stopping there, I'm not stopping there, and it drinks from our willpower cup. Stress diminishes our ability to control our emotions, right? When we're cranky, it's not really stress. It's really a function of depleted willpower. Okay, for all the women out there, I love you and I am you, but our multitasking drinks heavily from our willpower cup, right? Like, I am one of the worst multitaskers, or should I say best multitaskers, right? Right? Doesn't always serve me. But think about it too, in terms of how many self-improvement goals have you made at one time? That's also multitasking.
Yeah.
Right? In all irony, low blood sugar depletes our willpower dramatically. So the irony is, right, that I call it weight loss. In my world, it's weight management and fat removal, right? But in weight loss, when we are told to eat less, move more, of course we have no willpower because we're told to eat less, which drops our blood sugar, which diminishes our willpower. And then we go, I want all the things. I have no willpower. Of course you don't, because you have low blood sugar. Right? Really interesting study about low blood sugar. So when we have low blood sugar and when our willpower is depleted, our human nature is to maintain status quo, right? To resist anything new and unknown and maintain status quo. So taking it completely out of food, there were studies of courts and people who were going before judges for parole. Those who appeared before the judge in the morning or after a food break received parole 65 to 70% of the time. Because, right, when we don't have low blood sugar, the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex turns on, right? The reptilian brain in the back can turn off, and we're willing to give people a shot.
Yeah.
We're willing to see what happens. We're willing to push boundaries, right? We aren't living in trying to maintain safety and fear. Those who appeared before the judge late in the day or before a food break, right? Last person before a food break, won parole less than 10% of the time.
Mm.
So I hope you are never before a judge. If you are, go for first thing in the morning, first thing in the afternoon, right? But
that's very interesting.
But it helps give us some compassion with ourselves to say, of course, when I have low blood sugar, I am looking for safety, right? I'm trying to maintain what I know. I'm not willing to attempt something new or push myself into something unknown, right? Lack of sleep, I mentioned, right? So if sleep is one of our greatest willpower replenishers, lack of sleep dramatically decreases our willpower. So I think it's important to just recognize all of the things that are drinking from this cup. So for most people, it's not that we don't have willpower, it's that we're using it in other places. And then we're frustrated with ourselves when we don't have any left over for the thing that we want to use it on in any given moment.
I love this because it's a concept that I never thought about. And it just, in my mind now, it creates awareness. Um, as I go
Right.
about my day, and if I'm feeling a certain kind of way, then I can think, do I have low blood sugar? Like, what is going
Exactly.
on? Like, it's all interrelated. Okay, I
Exactly.
love this.
And
Yeah,
that's the thing where we all think that we suck. You don't suck. We just didn't understand and put all the pieces together. And
right.
now, when we start to talk about the things that replenish our willpower, now there's meaning behind having those things in our day. And then we're also more apt to do them because we understand why.
Yes,
Beyond
yes,
just, I was told to, right?
yes.
So, all right, what refills our cup? Glucose, eating, nutrition,
Now, they
right?
can't just eat
Yeah.
anything, though.
Right, nutrition. So, protein, fiber, quality fat. Protein is clean, lean protein. Fiber is vegetables and sometimes fruit. And quality fat is like one serving of quality fat is half of the avocado. Everybody eat the avocado, right? You're all afraid. Eat half of the avocado. That's a serving, right? Olive oil, avocado oil, walnuts, almonds, right? We want our quality fat. Think about too, quality breakfast with protein, fiber, quality fat supports our blood sugar for the entire day, especially when we're stressed, right? Eating consistently throughout the day. So generally a meal is going to last us like 4 to 5, maybe 5.5 hours, depending. A snack is going to last us 1 to 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to eat regularly, right? To keep our blood sugar stable within a middle range. Like we want it to go up and down, right? But within a middle range, avoiding the extremes. And we're going to experience what it feels like to have a lot more willpower,
Let me
even though
ask you
really we're just
this.
keeping
I'm
us stable.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, good.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm
You're
thinking,
good.
what about those folks that are practicing intermittent fasting? They're not eating breakfast, for example.
Yeah. So I like fasting better for men than for women.
Mm-hmm.
For everybody across the board, the fasting that I like is 2 to 3 hours before bed to about an hour to 90 minutes after waking up.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go more extreme, sunset to sunrise is our fasting window. The idea that we are going to expect our body to perform without proper fuel does not send safety signals to the body.
Yeah.
Then you consider the fact that the average American, given 24 hours a day to eat, cannot meet the minimum nutritional requirements of the human body. And that is minimal nutrition requirements, meaning what's required for us to not deteriorate, right? Given 24 hours, most people can't do that. So how we think that that's going to happen in just a few hours sort of just logically boggles my mind, right? Especially if we have a fat removal focus. Our body will not release fat if it is fighting to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people who are doing the fasting for cellular metabolism, right? For cellular repair. Oftentimes those benefits are happening 24, 36, 48, 72 hours of a fast, not the 8 or 12 or 16 that people are often doing in their intermittent fasting.
Right.
So depends on your health goals, depends on your physiology, right? Like biochemically, but especially for women with our hormones, that can wreak havoc on our system.
Yeah. It's definitely something that folks have to consider, especially women. I've been
Right.
all over the map with it, and I realize now that I can't lean into the fasting like I once did. It's just
Yeah.
it's no longer really working for me.
Right. Right. Now, the interesting piece of it, what does work, what does help support willpower, are what we call red lines, rules, lines in the sand. So generally for people who are, following an intermittent fasting approach, generally they just have red lines. And then it cuts down the chatter in their mind about food.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts down the decision making. It also is frankly just a way for most people to end up in a calorie deficit rather than thinking about the quality of the calories. But on the willpower front, it's the red lines that can make things easier. So when I first started focusing on all this stuff, one of the rules that I made for myself was I don't eat food out of a bag. I don't eat food that comes in a bag. Right? What do we think? Mostly chips, right? Like
Chips,
those kinds of things.
cookies.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was a way for me to just shut down the mental conversation around some of those foods. So red lines can be helpful, but we want to consider how we're using them and where we're putting them. You know?
Yeah.
As you were talking about before, exercise refills our metabolism or refills our willpower cup, and accountability refills our willpower cup. Couple of my favorites that everybody overlooks: charity and generosity. If we can get out of ourselves, it will improve our willpower. Hold the door for the person behind you, right? Pay for the person's coffee in line behind you. Getting out of ourselves, out of our own stuff, can help us, as does higher level thinking, right?
Yeah.
Gratitude can help improve our willpower, refill that cup a little bit. Distractions can become really helpful. So like the famous study of this was the kids with the marshmallows. Do you remember this? Like bunch of kids in a room, put a marshmallow in front of each one and said, if you don't eat it for 5 minutes or however long it was, I don't remember, right? We'll give you 2, right? You'll get another one and then you can eat both.
Yeah.
But if you eat it, you're not going to get another one. The kids who were able to wait out the time were the ones who distracted themselves. They played with their shoelaces. They looked at the ceiling. They watched the clock. They did a million things to sort of distract themselves. So we can improve our willpower with a bit of distraction.
I had another light bulb moment, Jen. That's good. Because here's the thing, at least for me and a lot of folks that I talk to, during the day, folks can stay pretty consistent because they're at work, for example. They can stay away from, in some offices, like the bagged foods and stuff. But then they get home and the distractions, they don't have the same level of
It's also the
distractions.
release of stress.
Yes, and the stress. Yes. Yes.
It's about putting things in place that fit those needs. We're using the food as a tool, right? It's almost like an inappropriate key for the lock, right? It works sometimes. But if what we're really looking for is distraction, how else could we do that?
Yeah.
And that, by the way, is also a process, right? Of that
Yes.
evolution is certainly a process. And again, a reason to work with somebody who can walk you through that and support you through that, because our expectation is that we flip a switch.
Yeah. And let me ask you about the stress, because that's a huge thing that I see with, and you probably see it too. Let me give you an example. I had a client that um, she called me one day. She told me she had a bad day. She's stressed out. She's a lawyer. She had to do something that she didn't anticipate doing.
Yeah.
And so she said, well, I just had to get the candy bar and the cookies. And I just, I had to
Right.
have it because I was
Yeah.
stressed out. And so for someone like that, well, we're all like that. I'm like that.
Yeah. Right.
We,
That's
how do
also
we
chemical,
resist? Yeah. Yeah.
right? Cortisol, the increased cortisol, that stress hormone, creates a craving for those higher glycemic foods. Right? So again, even in that moment, you don't suck, right?
Yeah.
It's chemical. So when it comes to those moments, we want to consider like, okay, great. We don't need to beat ourselves up. Our awareness that it happened is step one, right? The next time, maybe we notice sooner that it happened. Great. Then maybe the next time we're like, oh, I know what's happening, right? And we notice it in the moment. And we go, I'm craving this because I am stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really need is to help my body physiologically deal with that stress. And this is also a progression, right? Just as there's a progression of when we notice, maybe there's a progression in how we deal with it. So the first piece is maybe it's not the whole candy bar. Maybe we just have a piece of the candy bar, right? And then maybe the next time we have some tea. And then maybe the time after that, we're like, you know what? I don't even need to ingest anything. I need some fresh air.
Yeah.
And we walk outside and we take 3 deep breaths and we come back in, right? Recognizing what's happening is the first piece. And then we can choose how we deal with it and how we evolve.
Yeah. And like for me, like when I got started, I was sharing this with someone last week. I just didn't bring the stuff in the house because I knew if it was in my house, there was a high likelihood that I was going to consume it.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
Period.
And that works for some people. The
Right.
thing that I would encourage everybody is at some point in our lives, we want to figure out how to be around those things,
Yes.
even in moments of stress.
Yes, because now I have a family. Then it was just me. Now I have a family. I got a kid. Stuff comes in.
Right. Right.
And I had another funny story. I was telling someone last week. I dated this guy years ago that he could order, I don't know, dessert at dinner, and he would bring it home. He wouldn't eat it. He would not eat it at dinner, but he would bring it home, and he might have a spoonful of that dessert that evening, and then he'd put it up, and he would not eat it again until maybe the next day, and he'd have another spoonful. And I used to think, like, are you a psychopath? Like,
I know.
I don't willpower. I just never.
Right. I mean, we learn different behavior around these things, right? And over time, you might be able to do that too. If it's a priority for you, if that's something that you want to work on,
Yeah.
right? That dynamic with the food also is a complicated relationship that we want to work on over time,
Yeah.
which our red lines don't necessarily allow us to do. So not
Yeah.
bringing something in the house is like a red line. Great, super helpful, right? And in time, we want to be able to figure out that dynamic.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing you say is that it's a process. And I think that's what people sometimes get caught up with, is that they think it's supposed to happen like that, and it
Right.
doesn't.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
And I think in all of the research on willpower, those who have the willpower for the emergency situations. Have it, because on a daily basis, in their regular lives, they use their willpower to create habits. And then the more that becomes habitual, the less it drinks from our willpower cup to do those things.
Mm.
So over time, what are the habits that we can create to deal with the stress? The habits that we can create of having a quality breakfast, of making sure we have activity in our day, right? Of doing a gratitude journal, of recognizing those moments when we're just spent, our first signs of hunger, so that we know what it looks like when we have low blood sugar. I will say my first signs of hunger is that I get a little cranky insofar as I'm annoyed by a text that comes in. They don't know what I'm working on, right? But I'm annoyed that the text came through and interrupted me.
Yeah.
I don't feel like doing any of the work that I have to do. I am easily distracted, right? Those are my personal first signs of low blood sugar.
Mm.
So I know I need to eat something. And then all of a sudden, the text doesn't bother me. I can focus, right? I can do the things that I need to do.
And you said it. You said it's, and I think then I must have been on the right track in my speech, because when the lady asked me about motivation, I said, well, I don't know. Motivation kind of comes and goes. It's more like habits. For
Yes.
me, I get up and I go to the gym, for example, not because I'm motivated, but because it's become a habit, kind of
Yes.
like brushing my teeth, you know?
Right. We know, yes, it's a habit, and so you do it. And then we don't necessarily need the motivation because it's a habit.
Mm-hmm.
When we need the motivation is when life happens and our habits are disrupted.
Yes.
So we go on vacation and now we come home and it's back to our routine. That's when we might say, but I don't feel like it. It was so nice on vacation to sleep in, right? That's when the motivation of, I know I'm going to feel better, I like how this routine feels, right, helps us pick up where we left off in those habits.
Yeah.
But we needed momentum, right, in that we needed to get to a habit in order to have the motivation to continue it after disruption.
Yeah. I love this because you just broke it down so simply, so people can understand. Like it is a process that might begin with compliance. I love that.
Yeah. Awesome.
So you got to be compliant first. The motivation may not come first, because I feel like particularly now, we're in this society where we get on Instagram and we scroll on that all day because we're looking for motivation. Maybe if I see somebody that's has the body that I want or has a lifestyle I want, that'll make me get up and do it. And it doesn't.
So that, to me, is self-loathing and berating, and an attempt to beat ourselves up into compliance.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But it doesn't work.
I mean, it sits hard, right? Like that hit hard, but it's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that often happens when we've been going for a while, we're feeling pretty good, and then we get nervous. We get nervous it's not going to continue. We get to a point that we've been before, that in the past, getting past that moment or that, number on the scale, or that, time period, right, has been challenging. And all of a sudden we go, well, how do I keep going? What's going to motivate me, right? And then we can pause and think. Now, this is also like my own theory. This is not real research. Like the willpower stuff is real research. This is just my theory now. Okay. So I think what happens is that we've hit a plateau, right? A true plateau. And we go, how do I keep going? Right? Well, what motivated me in the beginning? I was motivated in the beginning because I was so unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go, I'm not so unhappy now. Maybe to keep going, I have to make myself unhappy. I have to beat myself up into compliance to keep going.
Mm.
And we try to like reclaim the thing that motivated us, you know, quote unquote, motivated us in the beginning in order to find the will to keep going. So I would encourage everybody to recognize that part of the process that we're going through, part of the evolution, part of our growth is not just in the habits and the food and all of these things and the activity, but also in how we think about things and what we look to for motivation and habits, right? To be motivated by what we do want rather than by what we don't want.
Mm. I
And
love
again,
it.
it goes back into the momentum and all of those other things.
Right.
Yeah.
I love this, Jen.
Oh, good. I know we could talk forever. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I know. And I was just thinking, I got to be respectful of your time, but let me ask you this. Is there anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you or you wanted to share that we haven't discussed, that you haven't discussed?
no, I think it's just for everybody to recognize like you don't suck. You're not a failure. It is so much more chemical than we've ever been led to believe. Even willpower, as we talked about, is so chemical that it helps us, I think, create a little bit of compassion and a little bit of space to evolve and grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not a failure of you as a human being at all.
Yeah.
And then, of course, come hang out with me, right? Come hang out with me. Salad with a Side of Fries, wherever you're listening now, is my podcast. My website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Over there, you can grab a freebie called It's Not What to Eat, It's How to Eat. My email list, of course, you know, and then all social media, I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK.
I love this conversation. I love this. This was helpful not only to me. I mean, I'm the guest. I mean, I'm
I
the
love
host.
it so much.
Like,
Yeah, right.
I mean, this was very helpful to me, and I know the listeners. This just the way you broke it down and kept it so simple and easy. I really appreciate you, Jen.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you for joining me.
I appreciate it. It was a thrill. We'll have to do it again.
Oh, absolutely. You definitely have to come on again.